we are continuing our celebration and honoring of Black Music Month. Please help me welcome Stephen Campfield and Michael White, two of the most wonderful people that I know from the record business. They are both promotion men, or were promotion men. Both came from Dorsey High School. So let's go ahead and brag. Who came out of Dorsey?
I think Dorsey High in LA had more people that ended up in the record business than any other school. We had Lil Salas, the great Lil Salas, who became A&R director for MCA. Jesus Garber, who became a vice president of Motown and A&M Records. Cliff Winston, program KGLH. Eric Rico Reed, afternoon air personality at KGLH in Coast 103. We had Jody Watley. We had the jazz ensemble Hiroshima. Even Tony Basil. Oh, Mickey,
Wow.
you're so fine, you blew my mind. She went to Dorsey. In fact, the cheerleaders on the back of that song were the cheerleaders at Dorsey High that time that record was released.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember other people coming out of Dorsey?
Just me. Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, somehow it became I don't even know a reason why. But the people just migrated toward the record business.
Did you have a big music department there?
We had a wonderful music department. I mean, played at the Hollywood Bowl.
How did you start in the record business?
And I had a very good friend who always kept a lot of money in his pocket. And I said, well,
Good.
Exactly. I said, look, I want to do what you're doing. He was working in shipping. I didn't know what he was shipping. I mean, it wasn't him. It was just the whole department.
Right.
They told me they didn't have a job in shipping. Said, but do you think you can do production control? I said, sure. What is it? And they gave me a little test that I had to, match numbers or whatever. And they gave me the job. And that's where I started.
Wow.
In the factory, in the plant.
And how did you transfer from the factory into promotion?
A guy named Jimmy Cheers, who was the promotion guy before Wendell Bates. They wanted to hire a black CSR, customer
And this
service
was at
rep.
Capital EMI.
Yes, it was.
Yes.
Hmm. That's how I got into sales. Somewhere Larkin had a part in it also.
And Larkin was head of Capital,
Of
the black music
Black
department.
music as it was, A&R.
He actually gave Marvin Gaye a huge payday, went over to Columbia,
Luther.
Vandross,
The
but
group
he
I
did a
was-
lot at Capital. He brought in Natalie Cole, the Silvers, Tavares, Maze, Frankie Beverly Maze.
Taste of Honey. We were happening then in 77, 78. And he saw that I was working in the factory. He's like, hey, we got to get you out of there. And so he helped promote me.
Wow.
Yeah, my parents were very good friends with his aunt.
Oh, okay.
So like I said, it was all friends. And knowing someone somehow.
It's good to know people.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. And how did you start?
I actually started off as a jerk clerk for Warehouse Records on Crenshaw Boulevard near Coliseum Street.
Wow.
I was helping people find the records. They were trying to say, I'm looking for this song, it goes like this, and I had the answers for it, and I'd ring them up. And then eventually, it became known at Warehouse Records that I was a go-to person when somebody needed to know something about music. It would say, call Stephen, he might know. And so I became a manager for one of the Warehouse stores, the one in Hawthorne, of the Hawthorne Mall. And then I was offered a job through Warehouse as a buyer. My mentor at Warehouse, her name is Karen Kerr. She said, you would be great as a buyer. You should take this opportunity. I said, well, Karen, I don't know anything about that. She said, we'll teach you everything. So I became one of 5 people that ordered all the records and tapes for all the Warehouse stores up and down the state of California.
Wow.
And then VIP Records
I remember VIP
came courting.
very well.
They came knocking on my door.
Harold was my guy.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go. They were interested in having me aboard. So they offered me a job. They had a buyer there already, and they wanted to split the buying up. One person taking care of the albums, the other person taking care of the tapes. So I was in charge of ordering all the 8-tracks. That's how long ago this was. And cassettes for VIP Records. And that was probably 1977, 1978. And then eventually I became the reporter for VIP Records. When I say reporter, whenever radio stations would call, they would talk to me. They want to know what was selling,
Yes.
what the top hits were. And then all the record promoters at that time would come and see me to make sure
You were
that I
saying
mentioned
their
record was selling,
yes.
their artist was happening, people were coming in looking for so-and-so and such and such. And so I told each and every single person that came in, I would love to have a job like this one day. I would just love to have a job like this one day. So one day, Michael
Okay.
Johnson,
Uh-huh.
who at that time was at a company called Record Merch. It was an independent distributor firm. They distributed Motown Records, TK Records, Prelude, and some other labels. Was on his way to Warner Brothers. He said, Stephen Campfield, I think you'd be great as a promotion person. So I went on an interview with the president of Record Merch, and met a few other people, and I was offered the job. So this was 1979, January 1979, and first number one record I had ever was "Ring My Bell"
Oh
by
my
Anita
God.
Ward. And when she came to town, we got a limousine and we took her to the radio stations, and I said, "Oh, this is it. I have arrived. I'm riding in a limousine to radio stations." Warner Brothers heard a lot about me, and the same person that brought me to Record Merch, Michael Johnson, was at Warner Brothers, and he was leaving Warner Brothers to go to Columbia. So he said, "Steve, you should follow my footsteps one more time.
Musical
Let
chairs.
me arrange an interview for you." So from what I found out, I was one of about 53, maybe 54 people
Wow.
that interviewed for that job. And I said to myself, man, there's no way in the world I'm going to get this. I'm just honored, thrilled to be considered. So in late December of 1979, a few days before my birthday, I got a phone call from Tom Draper, who's the head of the black music department at Warner Brothers. He's one of the people that interviewed me for the job. He said, "Stephen, I'd love to have you come aboard.
Oh.
We want you to start in January, first Monday in January." And that's a phone call I'll never forget. And that was the beginning of nearly 9 years of working for Warner
Wow.
Brothers in promotions and marketing. So I was responsible for going to the radio stations in the LA area, San Diego, Phoenix, Vegas, and points in between, to get the records played. The first 3 months I was there, from January of 1980 to April 1980, it was a drought, very dry. I had not delivered a hit for Warner Brothers Records, and I was starting to freak out.
But that changed.
That did change. At that particular time, R&B radio was really starting to embrace ballads. And Motown was really successful with Lionel Richie, and Michael White worked at Capitol, and there was a guy named Peabo Bryson going up and down the charts with his ballads. Luther Vandross, Jeffrey Osborne left LTD, so we had Larry Graham. He left Graham Central Station. He also came from Sly and the Family Stone initially.
He had a ballad.
Not only was he a great bass player, but he has a great bass singer. So I first heard "One in a Million You," and I said, I know this record's going to be a hit. Well, I want to make sure it's going to be a hit. So the Friday before we serviced that record, we went to the radio stations on Mondays and Tuesdays each week. So the Friday before we serviced that record, I called up all the radio stations that I was involved with and asked how many different women worked at the stations, what were their names, and what department they worked in. So I wrote all the information. Monday morning, I stopped off at Conrad's Florist and picked up a rose for each woman that worked at Cute 102 and KGFJ and K-Day and KGLH and KACE. And then here, walking to the radio station with all these roses and copies of the record. So not only am I seeing the program director and the music director, who's the person I'm supposed to see, I was also seeing the ladies, handing them the record. And that record eventually became a number one song, R&B.
Wow.
Also crossover pop, it went top 10 pop. And that was my very first gold album. When I say gold album, it sold over 500,000 copies nationally. And so the promotion people who were involved with that record, they got their own gold plaque. And so from that point on, hits started coming in and started flowing. We had Shaka Khan with What You Gonna Do For Me that year. Shaka Khan, yes. A group called Change with The Glow of Love.
That's right.
And Love's
Awesome.
Holiday. We were working the second Prince album. Actually, the second Prince album that I was involved with. I came at Warner Brothers right after I Want to Be Your Lover by Prince was a hit. The second single didn't do so well. We came out with the second album called Dirty Mind, which really wasn't a radio-friendly album. Cuts were way
Too sexy.
way
for
too
the-
sexy, talking about oral sex, talking about incest, talking about self-satisfaction. Radio didn't want to hear that. We had one song on there called Uptown, which should have been a bigger hit than it was. But then the next Prince album, blew up, and as they say, the rest is history. Prince was a big thing happening around town, but we're trying to, when I say we, Warner Brothers was trying to cross Prince over to the pop side. He hadn't had much success on pop radio as he had on R&B radio. So there was a big concert in town at the Coliseum. Prince was opening up for the Rolling Stones.
Who did you take to that concert?
And who did I take to that concert? I took Lydia Nicole, the music director for KGFJ and Q102. I said, we're going to go see a great show. And so Prince, I think, was the first act that came on.
Is that why they had him on the tour? Because they wanted to cross him over?
Well, the Rolling Stones, from what I understand, wanted
Okay.
Prince.
All right, go ahead.
They knew he was a great musician. They heard a lot about him. So he was the opening act.
And we were excited.
We were really excited.
That we're going to see Prince with the Rolling Stones.
And then a person comes on stage and says, ladies and gentlemen, Prince. Everybody's yelling and screaming. And then they see Prince walk on the stage, and he's wearing black panties and
was it
really controversial fishnet stockings. And all of a sudden the cheers went from cheers to boos.
And they started throwing.
Before he even started playing his first note. And I guess a lot of people didn't know that this Prince guy was black. That probably had something to do with it too. So I was livid. People were yelling and screaming and booing.
Horrible.
Oh, it was amazing. And I couldn't really do anything because I was representing Warner Brothers at the Coliseum. I was the face of Warner Brothers Records there. So I had to roll with the punches. And I'm with you. Of course, I couldn't say anything either because I had to keep a cool head. So and I
wasn't cool though.
Oh no, you were
like,
upset.
what are they doing?
You were more upset than me.
This is terrible.
So I knew in the back of my mind that one day Prince would be much bigger than some of the people that he performed with. And of course, Prince ended up in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And actually, part of the movie Purple Rain, where he got booed off the stage, was influenced by the incident at the Coliseum.
Wow. Yeah, it was a horrible.
Let me tell you the group that opened for Jay Giles in 1980, 81. U2.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
Jay Giles were quintessential to a lot of acts.
Right.
But they set off people, just like the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
You know, because they took Muddy Waters and whomever, but they knew how to.
Howlin' Wolf.
They knew music.
Mm-hmm.
So those little fleas out in the audience.
Yeah.
They're all now, you know.
Right. Exactly.
Converted.
Did you have a playbook that you worked from as a promotion man?
Well, we had conference calls every week, and we
Okay.
discussed the following week's agenda, what needed to be done, and we would have a sheet of every single station and what they were playing, and what rotation was being played in, how many times a day it was being played, and it was very scientific. So in that conference call, if your particular area, a particular song wasn't performing as well, they would focus on that, and it was very open conversation on the conference call. People would discuss with you what they had success with, how they got success on the record, and we worked as a team. But yeah, that was part of the playbook. We had certain records that had to get played. Of course, we wanted to get all the records played, but you know, we were competing against Capitol Records and Motown and Arista and Atlantic, Columbia Records, MCA.
Columbia, right? Columbia.
It was impossible, but both Michael and I had a lot of success doing what we did, and basically a lot of it was teamwork. Not to mention the great people that we worked at with the radio stations, Lydia and Nicole.
There you go. And what was your training as a promotion man?
Going to the record stores, putting up displays, discussing exactly what was going on with the record. Royce Fortune told me, he says, I don't want anything on my walls that I'm not selling. Okay, so it was a quid pro quo, and it allowed me to talk to all the people and always work the records. And I enjoyed it because what I did was I worked all records. Like I said, I worked Jay Giles, I worked Red Hot Chili Peppers. I was not in black music, I was in sales. Okay, and so that prepared me for all situations. Plus, I loved all music.
Do you remember having success with a record at the record stores but not on radio?
Yes.
Which was?
Kid Creole and the Coconuts.
Oh my goodness.
August Darnell, the brainchild behind that group. That record, whenever it was played in the record shops, generated interest with the customers who were in the store. want to know who that was. And that's a very visual group.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't really hear what was going on. You had to see what was going on. So we did a lot of shows, invited a lot of radio and retail people there. But the success of the sales just from playing in the record stores, the people at each store who reported to the radio stations, I made sure, I was on the other side telling them, please let KGFJ, let K-Day know that whenever you play this Kid Creole and a Coconut song, it generates interest. Now, unfortunately, that did not carry on around the country. They were big in L.A. Songs, Stool Pigeon was one of them. I'm a Wonderful Thing, I think went number one locally, but didn't get past the top 50 nationally. So it was more of a regional thing. But that would be the case of, instead of usually records of success at radio, and it trickles down to the retail store. This was the other way, went from retail to radio.
The best retailers, you'd walk into their stores and you present your music. And what they would do is help you promote it. And so LA is not your breaking market. Things would be going on at retail that were actually more of a nest for radio.
Mm-hmm.
So that when we were telling you it was being played at WBMX, and wherever, and you really had no way to respond to it. But then also the combination of that flow across the country, and then the impetus that we began early on in the project created something. So I would have to go through a person like Steve Campfield, and he would know his audience. So he's going to play a song that's going to work for his
audience.
Customers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so it's just a symbiotic relationship that wasn't necessarily conscious, but was one that was effectual.
You just made a point, and when I was at Q in KGFJ, I didn't care where it was playing.
Right.
If I didn't like it, I didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. I was like, yeah, okay, I don't like it. I don't like it. But it also didn't matter because if I liked it, and you guys had other priorities, tough. It was like, but this is the record.
Right.
We like this record.
I had someone tell me that Can't Touch This was a whack record. It only sold 15 million records.
There are record people that I would deal with that, to me, they had an ear. So when they said this is a good record, I trusted them, not because they were bringing me what the company wanted, because I too had those morning calls when I worked at Casablanca. These are the records you got to get played. We're getting the pressure from this manager.
Mm-hmm.
They want to see results. I mean, I knew all of that. So for me, it was about my ear.
Right.
Not so much what I personally liked, but I was groomed by Frankie Crocker. I was groomed by Wanda Ramos and Hal Jackson. I had an ear to hear a hit.
Right.
And then there were times when I couldn't hear it. And one of the rules that I had internally for myself was play it again in a week. Play it again in another week. Because sometimes there are records that you don't hear it the first few times, but 2 months later, they pop.
We were a collective on the R&B side, okay? Because if K-Ace and KGFJ didn't play it, it might not be a hit because only KGLH is playing it. Or whatever combination you look at. That's why we went around and, hey, see KGFJ Monday morning at 10 or whatever. See whomever, and just that whole rotation.
You not only worked R&B, but you also worked pop. What were the differences that you saw for pop music versus R&B music? Because there was a difference.
When you're talking about a promotion person and a CSR person being in the office, and the rest of the office being white, we used to always say when we started talking about black music, how the toilet pressure went down. I'll be right back. So the overall politics of it, along with the numbers, because if there was an act at the Roxy, I'm talking about, and this was true with most things, I'm not separating out, but our president and everybody in the company was at the show.
Mm.
That wouldn't necessarily be true if you were playing, I'm not sure where we could play at that time, but anyway, it would be a selective audience. And so, when you have the weight of numbers and the dollars, it makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
I stood outside Kiss Radio boycotting them for not playing Billy Squier. I was involved in all aspects.
Now, and Warner Brothers, just want to say, not all the times do we follow the formula an R&B artist becoming a hit on R&B and then crossing over to pop. There were instances where we would have a white artist, in this particular case Madonna, who actually got her start on black radio.
Yes, you brought her over.
I brought her over to your station.
That's right.
I brought her over to Q102
That's right.
and KGFJ and introduced her to,
That's right.
And she was played on black radio 3 or 4 months before
Wow.
Kiss FM, and at that time KIQQ would play her. Lucky Star was a hit on KGLH and KACE, KGFJ, KDA, and Q before Kiss FM was even aware what was going on. So ironically, that particular artist got her start in R&B radio, and then she kind of, I guess, reverse crossed over to pop, and the rest, they say, is history. Of course, her first album was produced by
Jelly Bean.
Jelly Bean on one of the tracks, but James Mtume and Reggie Lucas. And their second album was produced by Nile Rodgers, so there was an R&B connection there. Both Michael and I, we were very fortunate at the time that we got our jobs as promotion people, that there was a brand new thing called MTV and BET. That really opened up the game for record sales. When MTV and BET made their debut on the air, and people could actually see what the artists looked like as opposed to just hearing them on the radio, record sales just exploded. It's probably the biggest time in music where sales accelerated since the Motown sound and the British invasion. People were buying Prince's latest album and the catalog albums. Van Halen was big at Warner Brothers. They had like 3 or 4 albums out before they broke out big with the song Jump. All of a sudden their record catalog was taking off. And I remember those days, promotion checks were flying out the door. Warner Brothers, and I'm sure Capitol as well, and the other labels were making more money than ever. People would stand in line at the counter looking for a particular record. And those are the glory days of record stores, the glorious days of radio, and the glory days of promotion.
And the conversion to CD.
The conversion to CD, yes. You can hear the sound much better.